Good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to be here with you today. It looks like we have a very diverse group of professionals on the call, so thank you so much for joining. I want to just thank Travis for his efforts and his team's efforts to keep professional development and networking going. I'm sure, like many of you, I am so excited to get back to in-person events, but it's wonderful to have an avenue for us to all get together. As Travis mentioned, I am the CEO of F3 Limited Services. I am one of the managing partners at the Moxie Group. I am a mother of three, and just looking forward to sharing with you my story today. I have lived in corporate America for the last 25 years. And about 6 months ago, I took the leap to entrepreneurship. When I was asked to speak at a talk, I was a little concerned as I feel I am still climbing a very, very steep hill. But I've learned that so many of us over the last 12 months have changed directions. I was thinking about what should I have for my topic today, and I have been given so much great advice over my career. But one thing that all of my mentors did was talk about listening. And I wanted to share just a trip down memory lane on why I have developed such an appreciation for the skill of listening. My story starts in 1958. My grandfather was a landowner and he was a farmer. He was playing cards with a bunch of his friends who were also farmers. He tells me this is a ritual that they did every Saturday. And one of the topics of that day was the difficulty of getting fertilizer to their small town of about 1,000 people. He heard them go on and on about the frustration of the shipments arriving late, or the salesman could never pick up and be found via the phone. So as he listened intently, he went home that evening, talked to my grandmother, and said, I want to buy fertilizer in bulk, and I want to allow the farmers to grab these bags as they need them, and we'll bill them. They'll just leave us a ticket. They took 3 or 4 for the day, and we'll bill them. I'm not for sure that many of us would trust that approach today, but he was sold on it. She thought he was a little crazy, but the farmers loved it. So the picture you see on the screen is their little barn that they purchased to create space for bulk orders of fertilizer. I'll tell you, I think my grandfather would have been happy with the penny profit that he was able to gain by just selling bags of fertilizer, listening to the problem and trying to solve it. However, his customers wanted more. He told me about 6 months later, they were sitting with a group of the same farmers, and the topic that day surrounded the difficulty of spreading that fertilizer in their field. So again, he started listening. They were frustrated with how long their days were, how hard it was to find the team member to walk those fields and spread the fertilizer. This time, he said, I'm going to act immediately. I'm going to offer these gentlemen the savings that I've created from my first business, and I want to buy a fertilizer truck. He offered them to be able to rent it by the day, by the month, by the week. He wanted to solve that problem for them. Before we knew it, he had a truck that was never there and a small business that was built on listening to people's problems and solving them. Now 1968 is here, and my father, Denny, enters the picture. He's about ready to come home from the armed services. And when my grandfather talked to him, he told me stories of my dad being this avid reader. He loved books about presidential candidates, military leaders, books that talked about commanding your own ship and looking in the mirror and taking action. My grandfather was listening. As soon as my dad arrived home, he challenged him to start a business. My dad wasn't quite intent on acting immediately, but he wanted to go home and talk to the farmers. He'd been away for a while, and see if he could create a business. He asked what their problems were. He asked how they could be solved. He asked what they needed. And then he spoke to my mother and said, I want to create a place where the gentleman can go and have coffee. They can have conversation. They can get the products they need and the services that they are after. So what once was Westfield Grain, as you see the picture on the screen, turned into Westfield Grain and Fertilizer. About now, I am in the picture. I am growing up, and one of my favorite things to do is go to the office with my father. One thing I always remember him telling me is, Kylie, silence is a sign of respect. I think that was his way of telling me to be quiet, quite honestly. I'm sure so many of you have parents like that who are very purposeful in their message, but as kind as possible. But I was a very curious kid. I had lots of questions. But his point to me was, listening is learning. And he did not want to silence my voice. I know what he wanted to do is to have me be ready to act when my name was called. It was called about the age of 10. I had always been in the shop every single Saturday watching the gentleman change oil in the shop trucks. One of the names, his name is Mike, actually turned around to me and said, Kylie, are you ready to jump in? Would you like to help us change the oil? I kind of looked around and thought, oh, me? Absolutely. I'm ready. I want to be hands-on. He said, you have to answer this question first. What is the first step that we have to take? Of course, I jumped right in, very eager, very enthusiastic. You have to jack up the truck. You have to unplug it. You have to drain it. I went on and on. I had been listening, and I was ready to act. I'm so thankful for that opportunity. It allowed me to have success in many different things because I had taken on a genuine interest in what it means to listen. So after high school, I went on to play 2 sports in college. My coaches, I can assure you, were laser focused on learning new plays and learning new drills. And they did not spend much time holding my hand. Even as a freshman, they expected me to take on verbal cues. And I needed to be listening yet again. I would hear plays called like Hut, 5, Alabama, Kentucky. If I was not listening intently, I could cause my middle hitter in volleyball to look really bad. If I stole a base when I wasn't supposed to, that could land me on the bench. I wanted to talk about listening today because I think we really need to get back to the basics. As I fast forward through my first professional position, this is kind of where everything I learned about listening failed me. I rehearsed for my presentation over and over. I knew the material front and back. I prepared for all the questions. I even planned for some of the rebuttals that I thought may come to me. The problem is the people in the audience were very curious like me when I was growing up. Their questions did not meet my storyline, and I tried to respond with robotic answers. Unfortunately, that created a below average performance. If I would have just listened and responded with genuine answers, I know I would have done a much better job. So many of us are scared to do that. Just want to encourage you to be in the moment. As I progressed in my career, I did have the ability to start leading people. That has been a great honor. But I will tell you that the need to lean on my listening skills has been dramatically increased. It's tough. Maybe some of you listening today feel the same. I often get overwhelmed with the amount of data that's coming in, whether it be emails or text messages, LinkedIn. It might be TikTok now is in the business world, and it's very noisy. And I was struggling to get messages out to my colleagues, to my coworkers, even speaking with my boss, but especially my customers. If any of you have kids in the audience today, you're probably like me. I've had lots of conversations with them about not being desensitized. They need to listen. They're constantly scrolling and not stopping. And they take these bold gestures to get their attention. And it can be like that for us in business as well. I encourage you to remember the art of a great conversation. It involves one, listening, first and foremost. It involves sharing, and it also involves reflection and acting with a purpose. Too often, I think our relationships are based on bits and pieces of information. And as a business owner or a C-suite member or an account manager, it's hard to provide sound advice if you're always just grabbing sound bites. So we really want to get back, I believe, to the art of a great conversation. It's needed now more than ever. I wanted to share a few tips with you guys that have been beneficial to me. As I mentioned, I've had some great mentors, but there's 4 primary items that have stuck out to me and I've tried to implement in my business. The first one I'd like to focus on for better listening is I would urge you to get clarification. For example, a customer might ask you or tell you, service is the most important thing to me. Well, what does that mean? Does it mean they want on-time deliveries? Does it mean they need better content creation? Does it mean they want more technical support? Some things that have worked for me is just saying, well, go on. Can you tell me more? And that ends up giving me a little bit better summary of exactly what is important to that client. Number 2 is separate disagreement from criticism. I think as a young professional, that's something I learned. And often we are checking out of conversations too early because someone disagrees with our opinion. I encourage you to take this as an opportunity to be non-biased about someone else's business solution or suggestion. Do not stop listening and start planning your rebuttal. As leaders, often we do this. We come to the table with a suggestion or a solution and we think it's the only way. But I encourage you to listen to others' opinions, and maybe that solidifies your direction, or maybe it cracks the window a little bit and gives you new insight that really can benefit your company. The third one is be vulnerable. I know so many of us want our family, our friends, our coworkers, our bosses to believe we have everything together. I know I sure don't. And the truest partnerships are built on discussing your strengths and weaknesses without a fear of being judged. I don't expect for you to share everything with your coworkers or your professional relationships. Sometimes you do develop those where you just feel the special connection to really discuss things at a deeper level. But I would encourage you to be open to responding honestly. If you're listening today on the call and you've been asked, how are you doing over this last week? My guess is 99% of you have said, I'm fine, or I'm good. Be vulnerable. Tell them how you're really feeling. If someone would have called me this morning and I would have said, I'm nervous, I'm going to be talking to all these wonderful, diverse professionals, I want to make sure they take away something from me that's valuable. If they would have called tomorrow, I would have said, or if they would have called yesterday, I might have said, I'm frustrated. I've sent out 15 emails. I've only received 2 responses, and it's not the action that I'm looking for. So take that first step, find a new answer. If someone asks you how you are doing, respond honestly. The fourth thing is don't be a sentence grabber. I'm not for sure if you've heard that phrase before, but if you've ever been in a conversation where someone completes your sentences, that can be a little distracting with the person that you're communicating with. Be a better listener. I tend to want to go very fast through conversations, and so I have to really focus in on listening effectively. Make sure that that individual can complete their thoughts, because if not, you could derail them and send them in a direction that they weren't necessarily wanting to go. I want to just end this talk today by encouraging you to teach yourself to be a better listener. I feel it can dramatically improve the quality and richness of your relationships, whether that be with your spouse, your coworker, your boss, your kids. I strive to be like a roller coaster for my clients, and I want to challenge you to do the same. When you're a great listener, you give your customer energy, excitement, acceleration, you give them visibility. But the biggest thing you do for them when you're a great listener and like a roller coaster is you participate in the ups and downs. And you have to be listening intently to do that. One quote I love, and I want to share it with the audience today, is wisdom is the reward you get for a lifetime of listening when you would have preferred to talk. We all know practice makes perfect. And going back to my father, I remember the thing that he said he kept on his visor in his pickup truck when he started a business is you have to start and you have to pay attention. So I just encourage you to do that in your next meetings, in your next relationships. And I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for having me.